She thought love was about status, money, and keeping up appearances, until her car broke down on a lonely highway and changed everything. Charlotte Hale, daughter of a powerful CEO, never imagined that one humiliating moment and a few careless words about poor mechanics would lead her straight into the arms of the very man she'd just insulted. Marcus Reed had every reason to walk away, but instead, he became the keeper of her most precious memory, her late mother's classic car. What Charlotte didn't know was that Marcus had been quietly protecting her long before they ever met, and the wealthy world she'd always trusted was about to turn against her in ways she never saw coming. But sometimes the heart wants what it wants, even when choosing love means losing everything you thought mattered. If you're watching this incredible love story, subscribe and tell me where you're from, because this tale of pride, prejudice, and second chances will leave you believing in the power of true love. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the coastal highway as Charlotte Hale's silver coupe began to sputter. She pressed harder on the gas pedal, but the engine responded with an angry cough that made her stomach drop. "No, no, no," she whispered, gripping the steering wheel tighter. Her phone buzzed against the passenger seat, another call from her father. She couldn't be late to dinner. Not tonight, when they were discussing the upcoming charity gala and her appearance with Wesley Grant. The car lurched once more before rolling to a stop on the narrow shoulder. Charlotte hit the hazard lights and stared at the dashboard, which now looked like a Christmas tree with all its warning lights. The ocean breeze whistled through a crack in her window, carrying the salt smell that usually calmed her. Tonight, it just reminded her how alone she was on this stretch of road. She grabbed her phone and called her father back. "Lottie, where are you?" Victor Hale's voice carried that familiar mix of concern and impatience. "The reservation is in 30 minutes. Dad, my car broke down on Highway 101. I'm about 10 miles south of the city." She rubbed her forehead, feeling a headache building. "I'll call a tow truck, but I might be late." "Absolutely not. I'll send Marcus from Delgado Auto. He's the best mechanic in town, and he's been working on your mother's car. He'll get you moving." Charlotte's chest tightened at the mention of her mother's 1967 Mustang convertible. It had been sitting in various repair shops for over a year since her mother passed away. Victor kept saying he wanted it restored properly, as a memorial. "Dad, I can just..." "Already texting him. Stay in the car with the doors locked until he arrives." She was about to protest when headlights appeared in her rearview mirror. A white tow truck with Delgado Auto, painted in blue letters on the side, pulled up behind her. That was fast, too fast. A man climbed out of the truck, and Charlotte's breath caught. He wasn't what she'd expected. Tall and lean with warm brown skin, he moved with quiet confidence as he approached her window. His work shirt was clean despite the late hour, and his smile was genuine as he gestured for her to lower her window. "Ms. Hale, I'm Marcus Reed from Delgado Auto. Your father called." His voice was calm and steady, like he dealt with stranded drivers every day, which, Charlotte realized, he probably did. "Thank you for coming so quickly." She turned off the engine and stepped out, immediately feeling underdressed in her business suit next to his practical work clothes. "I have no idea what's wrong. It just started making weird noises and then died." Marcus nodded and popped the hood. "Let's take a look." As he examined the engine with a small flashlight, Charlotte found herself watching his hands. They moved with practiced skill, checking connections and testing components. There was something soothing about his methodical approach. "Bad news?" she asked. "Not terrible." He straightened up, wiping his hands on a clean rag. "Your mass airflow sensor is failing. I can clean it enough to get you home tonight, but you'll need a replacement soon." "How long will that take?" 5 minutes. He went back to his truck and returned with a small toolkit. Just need to clean the connections and reset the computer. While he worked, Charlotte's phone rang, her father again. Lottie, what's the status? The mechanic is here. He says it's a quick fix. She glanced at Marcus, who was carefully cleaning a small electronic component. Dad, can I ask you something? Of course. The words tumbled out before she could stop them. Do you ever worry that I'm too focused on appearances? Like, what if I ended up with someone who didn't fit our world? What if I fell for someone completely inappropriate, like... She looked at Marcus again, who was now reconnecting wires with steady hands. Like a poor mechanic or something? She heard her father's gentle laugh. Sweetheart, you have excellent judgment. I trust you to choose someone who shares our values. But remember, character matters more than bank accounts. Right? The word felt hollow in her throat. Of course. Marcus finished his work and closed the hood. When he looked up, his eyes met hers for a moment. Something in his expression made her wonder if he'd heard her phone conversation. Her cheeks burned with sudden embarrassment. Try starting it now, he said simply. The engine turned over smoothly, purring like it was brand new. Charlotte blinked in surprise. That's amazing. How much do I owe you? Marcus shook his head. Your father takes good care of Delgado Auto. Consider it professional courtesy. She reached for her purse anyway. Please, let me give you something for gas money. I appreciate it, but no thank you. He started packing up his tools. Do you have a spare tire? I think so. He checked her trunk and nodded approvingly. Good. Tread. Proper pressure. You're set. He paused, studying her face. Ms. Hale, that sensor will probably last another week, maybe 2. Don't ignore warning lights, especially on this stretch of highway. I won't. She felt like a child being given safety instructions, which was ridiculous. She was 27 years old and ran marketing for her father's company. Marcus climbed back into his truck, then rolled down the window. Drive safe, he called. As he pulled away, Charlotte stood by her car, watching his taillights disappear into the gathering dusk. Her phone buzzed with a text from her father. Everything okay? She typed back. Fine. Heading to dinner now. But she didn't move. She kept thinking about Marcus's calm competence, his refusal to take her money, and most of all, the way he'd looked at her after she'd made that thoughtless comment about poor mechanics. Heat crept up her neck again. She'd basically insulted him to his face while he was helping her. The fact that he'd remained professional and kind made it worse. 20 minutes later, Charlotte walked into Ristorante Bella, where Victor was waiting at their usual corner table. He stood to kiss her cheek, his sharp eyes taking in her slightly windblown appearance. You look flustered, he observed as they sat down. It was just stressful being stuck on the highway. She unfolded her napkin, trying to collect herself. The mechanic was very helpful, though. Marcus is excellent. I've been meaning to tell you. He's the lead restoration specialist working on your mother's car. He's been incredibly careful with every detail. Charlotte's fork paused halfway to her mouth. He's restoring Mom's Mustang? For over a year now. Rosa Delgado says he treats that car like it's his own family heirloom. Victor's expression softened. I thought you might like to see it soon. He's been asking about original parts and color preferences. The irony hit her like a physical blow. The man she'd just dismissed as a poor mechanic was carefully restoring her most precious memory of her mother. She set down her fork, appetite gone. Dad, I think I said something terrible tonight. Victor raised an eyebrow. To Marcus? Not directly to him, but... She told him about the phone conversation, watching his expression shift from confusion to disappointment. Charlotte. His voice was gentle but firm. That young man has never asked for special treatment, never overcharged us, and has shown more integrity than some of my board members. What made you say such a thing? She stared at her untouched salmon. I don't know. I was stressed and embarrassed about breaking down, and I sounded like such a snob. We all say things we don't mean when we're upset. Victor reached across the table to squeeze her hand. The question is what you do next. I should apologize. That would be appropriate. They finished dinner in relative quiet, but Charlotte's mind kept drifting back to the moment on the highway. Marcus had looked her straight in the eye when he'd told her to drive safe. There had been no judgment in his expression, no anger, just a kind of patient dignity that made her feel small. Back at her downtown apartment, Charlotte kicked off her heels and sank onto her cream-colored sofa. Her assistant Nina had left a stack of gala planning documents on the coffee table, but she couldn't focus on seating charts and menu selections. Instead, she found herself staring at the framed photo on her bookshelf, her mother laughing in the driver's seat of the red Mustang convertible, wind whipping her dark hair around her face. It was taken the summer before she got sick, during what became their last road trip together down the coast. Her mother had loved that car. More than that, she'd loved the freedom it represented. Sometimes you have to get your hands a little dirty to find something beautiful, she used to say when they'd stop at roadside diners or small-town antique shops. Charlotte had forgotten that lesson somewhere along the way. When had she become someone who judged people by their job titles instead of their character? Her phone buzzed with a text from Nina. How was dinner with your dad? Everything okay with the car? She typed back. Car is fixed. Dinner was good. But I think I need to make an apology tomorrow. Uh-oh, what happened? Charlotte stared at the screen, then deleted her response without sending it. Some mistakes were too embarrassing to share, even with her best friend. Instead, she pulled up the contact information for Delgado Auto on her phone. Tomorrow, she would drive over there and face Marcus Reed properly. She would thank him for his help and apologize for her thoughtless words. It was the right thing to do. The least she could do was try to be half as graceful as he'd been tonight. As she got ready for bed, Charlotte caught herself wondering what it would be like to see him working on her mother's car. Victor had said Marcus treated it like a family heirloom. What kind of man put that much care into restoring someone else's memories? She fell asleep thinking about steady hands and patient eyes, and the way he'd wished her safe travels, even after she'd insulted everything he was. The next morning dawned clear and bright, with that crisp ocean breeze that made the whole city smell like possibility. Charlotte dressed carefully in dark jeans and a simple blue sweater, clothes that wouldn't look out of place in an auto shop. Delgado Auto sat on a tree-lined street in one of the city's older neighborhoods. The building was clean and well-maintained, with large bay doors that were already open to let in the morning air. She could hear the sounds of work, tools clanking, engines running, men calling to each other in both English and Spanish. A middle-aged Latina woman with sharp eyes and graying hair looked up from behind the front desk as Charlotte approached. Can I help you? I'm Charlotte Hale. I wanted to speak with Marcus Reed if he's available. He helped me last night. The woman's expression warmed slightly. I'm Rosa Delgado. Marcus mentioned the highway call. Your car running better this morning? Much better, thank you. I actually came to apologize for something and to see about getting that sensor replaced properly. Rosa nodded approvingly. Marcus is in Bay 3. I'll get him for you. While she waited, Charlotte looked around the office. It was organized and professional, with customer photos covering one wall, People standing next to restored classic cars, families posing with their newly repaired vehicles, thank you notes taped up between the pictures. "Ms. Hale." She turned to find Marcus wiping his hands on a clean towel. He'd traded yesterday's work shirt for a navy blue one with Delgado Auto embroidered over the pocket. His expression was polite, but guarded. "Thank you for seeing me. I wanted to apologize for what I said on the phone last night. It was thoughtless and rude, and I'm sorry you had to hear it." Marcus studied her face for a moment. "Hard days make for hard words sometimes. No harm done." His response was so simple and generous that Charlotte felt her throat tighten. "Still, I shouldn't have said it, especially not about someone who was taking time out of his evening to help me." "Appreciate the apology." Marcus glanced toward the service bays. "You mentioned getting the sensor replaced?" "Yes, and my father told me you're working on my mother's Mustang. I was wondering, could I see it?" Something shifted in Marcus's expression. "Of course, it's back in the restoration bay." He led her through the main garage, past mechanics working on various cars, to a separate area in the back of the building. And there, partially covered by a protective tarp, sat her mother's car. Charlotte's breath caught in her throat. The red paint gleamed like it had when she was a child, and the chrome bumpers reflected the overhead lights. Marcus had clearly spent countless hours bringing it back to life. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Still have some interior work left, and I'm waiting on a few trim pieces to match the original specifications." Marcus pulled back more of the tarp to reveal the dashboard. "Found something in the glove box I thought you might want to see?" He handed her a folded piece of paper, her mother's handwriting on cream-colored stationery. "For my daughter," it read. "When she's ready for her own adventures, drive carefully, but don't be afraid to take the scenic route. Sometimes the most beautiful destinations are the ones you discover by accident. Love always, Mom." Charlotte's eyes filled with tears. She'd forgotten about her mother's habit of leaving little notes in unexpected places. After the funeral, she'd found them tucked into books, taped inside jewelry boxes, even folded into coat pockets. This one must have been waiting in the car for over a year. "I clean and check everything before I start. Restoration work," Marcus said quietly. "Didn't want to throw away anything important." "Thank you." She looked up at him through her tears. "Thank you for taking such good care of it, of her memory. It's a privilege to work on a car like this. You can tell it was loved." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, both looking at the gleaming Mustang. Charlotte could almost hear her mother's laughter, feel the wind from countless drives with the top down. "Would it be okay if I brought you coffee sometime this week?" she asked suddenly. "For you and the team, as a proper thank you?" Marcus smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him. "Rosa would probably like that. She's got a weakness for good pastries." "I'll remember that." As they walked back toward the front office, Charlotte felt something she hadn't experienced in months. A sense of connection, of purpose beyond board meetings and charity galas. Her mother would have liked Marcus Reed, she realized, would have appreciated his quiet competence and gentle dignity. "Ms. Hale?" Marcus stopped by the service desk. "That sensor should last through the weekend, but don't push it longer than that. I'll bring the car in Monday morning." Rosa looked up from her paperwork. "Marcus, show her the photos from the engine work. She should see what kind of shape that Mustang was in when it arrived." As Marcus pulled up pictures on the computer, Charlotte found herself drawn into the story of her mother's car restoration. Every component had been carefully documented, cleaned, and rebuilt. It was clear that this wasn't just a job for Marcus. It was a labor of love. "Your father said to take whatever time we needed to do it right," Marcus explained, clicking through images of the rebuilt engine. said it was worth the wait to honor your mother's memory properly. Charlotte's chest tightened with emotion. Her father, despite his sometimes rigid focus on appearances, understood what really mattered when it counted. "When do you think it will be ready?" she asked. "Another month, maybe 6 weeks. Depends on how long the upholstery takes." "I can't wait to drive it again." She paused, then added quietly, "My mother used to say that car was her happy place, somewhere she could think and dream and just be herself." Marcus nodded. Best cars are the ones that carry good memories. As Charlotte prepared to leave, she realized she felt lighter than she had in weeks. The conversation had been simple and honest, without the careful social dancing that characterized most of her interactions. "Thank you again," she said at the office door. "For everything." "Drive safe," Marcus replied, echoing his words from the night before. This time she heard them as what they were: a simple expression of care from a good man who wished her well. She drove away thinking about coffee and pastries and the way Marcus's face had softened when he'd shown her the note from her mother. Maybe her father was right. Maybe character did matter more than bank accounts. Maybe she was about to learn something important about the difference between the two. Saturday morning arrived with a gentle coastal fog that made the whole city feel wrapped in soft cotton. Charlotte stood in her kitchen, arranging pastries in a white bakery box while coffee brewed in thermal carafes. She'd chosen carefully: chocolate croissants, blueberry scones, and Rosa's weakness, authentic Mexican conchas from the best panaderia in the Mission District. Nina perched on a bar stool, watching with curious eyes. "So, let me get this straight. You're bringing fancy coffee and pastries to an auto shop because you feel bad about something you said while talking to your dad?" "It's more complicated than that." Charlotte secured the bakery box with ribbon. "I was rude about someone who's been nothing but kind and professional. It's the right thing to do?" "Uh-huh." Nina's tone suggested she wasn't buying the simple explanation. "And this has nothing to do with the fact that you've mentioned this Marcus guy 3 times since Thursday?" Heat crept up Charlotte's neck. "I haven't mentioned him 3 times. Thursday night when you got home. Friday morning when you told me about the apology. Yesterday when you came back from seeing your mom's car." Nina counted on her fingers. "That's 3. Fine. 3 times. He's restoring something precious to me. Of course I'm going to think about that." Nina hopped down from her stool and grabbed a coffee carafe. "I'm coming with you." "What? Why?" "Because I want to meet the man who's got Charlotte Hale making breakfast pastry runs on Saturday morning." Nina grinned. "Besides, someone needs to make sure you don't put your foot in your mouth again." 20 minutes later, they pulled into Delgado Auto's parking lot. The shop was busy despite the early hour. Several cars in various stages of repair, mechanics moving with purposeful efficiency. Charlotte felt her stomach flutter with unexpected nerves. "Breathe," Nina whispered as they approached the front desk. "It's just coffee." Rosa looked up from her computer and broke into a warm smile when she saw the bakery box. "Ms. Hale, what have you brought us?" "Coffee and pastries for the team, a small thank you for all the help this week." Charlotte set the box on the counter. "And please, call me Charlotte." "Rosa," the older woman replied, already peeking into the box. "Oh, these smell incredible. Marcus, come see what Charlotte brought." Marcus appeared from the service bay, clean work shirt already smudged with grease despite the early hour. His eyes found Charlotte's immediately, and she felt that same flutter of awareness she'd experienced the day before. "Morning, Charlotte. You didn't have to do this." "I wanted to." She gestured toward Nina. "This is my friend and assistant, Nina Park." Nina stepped forward with her most charming smile. "Nice to meet you, Marcus. Charlotte's told me you're working on her mother's car." "It's been a privilege," Marcus replied, his attention shifting between them. Would you like to see the latest progress? They followed him back to the restoration bay, where the Mustang sat gleaming under the work lights. Charlotte caught her breath again. It looked even more beautiful than yesterday, if that was possible. I adjusted the carburetor yesterday, Marcus explained, running his hand along the fender with obvious affection. She's running like a dream now? Nina whistled softly. This is gorgeous. What year? 1967 convertible, 289 V8, original interior. Marcus pointed to various details with the enthusiasm of a man who truly loved his work. Your mother had excellent taste. Charlotte found herself watching Marcus's hands as he spoke. The same steady, capable hands that had fixed her car on the highway. There was something deeply attractive about a man who could create beauty from broken things. The coffee's getting cold, Rosa called from the front office. They gathered around the small break area, where the team had materialized as if summoned by the smell of fresh pastries. Charlotte watched Marcus interact with his coworkers. Easy jokes, genuine respect, the kind of camaraderie that spoke to good leadership. Charlotte, you have to try Rosa's coffee sometime, said a young mechanic named Jake. She makes it strong enough to wake the dead. Miguel brings better pastries, though, Rosa shot back with a grin. His grandmother's recipes. These are pretty perfect, Marcus said quietly, settling beside Charlotte with a chocolate croissant. Where did you find conchas this good? Little place on 24th Street. The owner's been making them for 30 years. Ah, Panaderia Luna. My friend Carlos swears by their tres leches cake. Charlotte blinked in surprise. You know it? Best bakery in the Mission. Marcus took a bite of his pastry and smiled. You did your homework. The easy conversation flowed around them. Weekend plans, baseball scores, gentle teasing about various mechanical disasters. Charlotte found herself laughing more than she had in months. These people had the kind of comfortable friendship she'd forgotten was possible. So, what do you do, Charlotte? Asked Miguel, Rosa's nephew, who handled the shop's bookkeeping. Marketing for Hale Enterprises. We do commercial real estate development. The Hale Tower downtown? Jake's eyes widened. That's your family's building? Charlotte nodded, suddenly self-conscious. The gleaming glass tower that housed her father's company was a world away from this warm, cluttered shop. Beautiful building, Marcus said simply. Good views of the bay. His tone was neutral, but Charlotte caught something in his expression, a kind of careful distance that hadn't been there before. The mention of her family's wealth had shifted something between them. Well, Nina announced, checking her phone. We should let you all get back to work. Charlotte has a dress fitting at 11. As they prepared to leave, Marcus walked them to the front door. Thank you again for the coffee. The team will be talking about those pastries all week. It was my pleasure. Charlotte hesitated, then added, Would it be okay if I stopped by again to check on the Mustang's progress? Of course. Rosa can call when we have updates. It was a polite response, but something had cooled in his demeanor. Charlotte felt a stab of disappointment as they walked to her car. He's lovely, Nina said once they were safely inside. Also completely gorgeous, in case you hadn't noticed. I noticed. Charlotte started the engine, glancing back at the shop. Did you see how he changed when Miguel asked about my job? Yep, classic rich girl, working guy tension. He probably thinks you're slumming. The words stung because they felt true. Charlotte had seen that look before, the moment when someone realized exactly how much money her family had and everything shifted. Some people became overly friendly, hoping for favors. Others pulled back, assuming she was shallow or entitled. I'm not slumming, she said quietly. I know that, but he doesn't, yet. Nina buckled her seatbelt. Give it time, Lottie. Good things are worth waiting for. The rest of the weekend passed in a blur of gala preparations. Charlotte stood for alterations on a midnight blue gown, approved final catering details, and reviewed the guest list with her father. Wesley Grant called to confirm their arrival time, his voice warm and familiar over the phone. Sunday afternoon found her back at Delgado Auto, ostensibly to check on her car's sensor, but really because she couldn't stop thinking about Marcus's careful distance from the day before. The shop was quieter on Sunday, with only essential staff working. Marcus was alone in the restoration bay, bent over the Mustang's engine with a focused intensity that made Charlotte hesitate in the doorway. "Don't want to interrupt if you're busy," she said softly. He looked up, a streak of grease across his forehead. "Just fine-tuning. Come see." The careful distance was gone, replaced by the same gentle warmth she'd felt Friday. Charlotte stepped closer, breathing in the familiar scents of motor oil and metal polish. "She sounds different," she observed as Marcus started the engine. "Smoother. Found a vacuum leak that was causing rough idle." He adjusted something under the hood, listening to the engine's rhythm. "Want to hear your mother's favorite song?" Before Charlotte could ask what he meant, Marcus reached through the open window and turned on the radio. The opening notes of "California Dreamin'" filled the restoration bay, and Charlotte's eyes filled with tears. "How did you know?" "CD was stuck in the player when the car arrived. Took me 3 months to work it free." Marcus turned off the engine, and sudden silence fell between them. "Your father said she loved driving to music?" Charlotte nodded, not trusting her voice. Her mother had played that song on every road trip, singing along with unselfconscious joy while Charlotte rolled her eyes from the passenger seat. Now she'd give anything to hear that slightly off-key voice one more time. "I should get going," she said finally. "Don't want to keep you from your work." "Charlotte." Marcus's voice stopped her at the bay door. "Would you like to get coffee sometime, away from the shop?" The invitation hung in the air between them. Charlotte felt her heart speed up, but underneath the flutter of attraction was something deeper. Genuine liking for this quiet, thoughtful man who treated her mother's memory with such care. "I'd like that very much." "Tomorrow evening? There's a good place near the waterfront." "Perfect." As Charlotte drove home, she found herself humming "California Dreamin' and thinking about the way Marcus's eyes had crinkled when he'd smiled. Nina was right. Good things were worth waiting for. And something told her that Marcus Reed might be very good indeed. That evening, as she reviewed seating charts for the gala, Charlotte's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Looking forward to tomorrow. Marcus." She stared at the message for a long moment before typing back. "Me too." It was simple and honest, like everything else about him. Charlotte fell asleep thinking about coffee dates and restored Mustangs, and the gentle way Marcus had said her name when he'd asked her out. Maybe her mother had been right about taking the scenic route. Sometimes the most beautiful destinations really were the ones you discovered by accident. Monday morning brought gray skies and the promise of rain. Charlotte dressed carefully for work in a charcoal suit and pearl earrings, but her mind kept drifting to the evening ahead. She'd chosen a simple dress and low heels, something pretty but not too formal for coffee by the waterfront. "You're glowing," Nina observed, settling into the chair across from Charlotte's desk with their usual Monday morning coffee. "I'm not glowing." "Definitely glowing, and you've checked your phone 4 times in the last 10 minutes. Nina grinned. "This coffee date has you nervous." Charlotte set down her phone with deliberate care. "I'm not nervous. I'm cautiously optimistic. About a man who restores classic cars and brings you backup when your car breaks down at night." "Yeah, I can see why you'd be cautious." Nina's voice was dry with sarcasm. He sounds terrible. It's not that simple. You know how these things go. Different backgrounds, different expectations. Charlotte trailed off, remembering Marcus's expression when he'd learned about her family's company. Or maybe, Nina suggested gently, you're overthinking because you actually like him. Before Charlotte could respond, her assistant knocked on the door. Charlotte, your father would like to see you in his office. Victor Hale's corner office overlooked the bay, with floor-to-ceiling windows that made the gray morning look almost dramatic. He was standing by the window when Charlotte entered, hands clasped behind his back in his thinking pose. How was your weekend, sweetheart? Good, relaxing. Charlotte settled into the chair across from his desk. The gala preparations are all on track. Excellent. Wesley called this morning to confirm dinner beforehand. Victor turned from the window, his sharp eyes studying her face. You seem different lately. Lighter. Do I? Your mother used to get that same expression when she was happy about something. Victor's smile was warm. Want to tell me what's put that look in your eyes? Charlotte felt heat creep up her neck. Her father had always been able to read her too easily. I've been thinking about Mom lately. Seeing her car again brought back good memories. Marcus has done beautiful work with the restoration. That young man has remarkable skill and integrity. Victor paused. I've been meaning to ask, how did your apology go on Friday? Very well. He was gracious about it. Charlotte hesitated, then added, He's not what I expected. Something in her tone must have caught her father's attention, because his expression sharpened slightly. In what way? Just that he's thoughtful, kind, the way he talks about Mom's car. She looked out the window at the gray sky. He really cares about doing right by her memory. Victor was quiet for a moment. Charlotte, you know I trust your judgment completely, but I want you to be careful about getting too personal with service providers. The words hit her like a splash of cold water. What do you mean? I mean that sometimes gratitude can be confused with other feelings. Marcus is a good man, but he provides a service for our family. It's important to maintain appropriate boundaries. Charlotte stared at her father, feeling like the walls of the familiar office were suddenly closing in. Appropriate boundaries? Professional distance. I've seen what happens when those lines get blurred. Victor's voice was gentle but firm. It usually doesn't end well for anyone involved. Dad, I'm just grateful for the work he's doing. Nothing inappropriate about that. But even as she said it, Charlotte knew it wasn't entirely true. Her feelings about Marcus had moved well beyond gratitude. The thought of coffee with him that evening made her stomach flutter with anticipation. Of course not. Victor smiled and kissed her forehead. I'm just looking out for you, as always. Now, shall we review the final guest list? Charlotte nodded and tried to focus on seating arrangements and menu choices, but her father's words echoed in her head. Professional distance, appropriate boundaries, service providers. As if Marcus was somehow less worthy of respect because he worked with his hands instead of pushing papers around a boardroom. By the time she left work, Charlotte's initial excitement about their coffee date had been replaced by a knot of anxiety. She sat in her car in the restaurant parking lot, staring at the ocean through the windshield and trying to sort through her feelings. Marcus was already inside when she arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 steaming mugs in front of him. He stood when he saw her, and his smile was so genuinely pleased that some of her tension eased. Hope you don't mind. I ordered for us. They make excellent chai here. Chai sounds perfect. Charlotte slid into the seat across from him, taking in the cozy atmosphere of the small cafe. This place is lovely. One of my favorites, Rosa introduced me to it when I first started at Delgado. Marcus wrapped his hands around his mug. How was your day? Busy, gala planning. Charlotte sipped her chai, surprised by how perfectly spiced it was. This is incredible. The owner's grandmother's recipe. She guards it like state secrets. Marcus's eyes crinkled with humor. So, tell me about this gala. Big event? Annual charity fundraiser. My father's company sponsors it every year. Charlotte found herself relaxing as they talked, drawn into Marcus's easy conversation. What about you? How long have you been restoring cars? Since I was 15, started helping my uncle with weekend projects. Marcus's expression grew thoughtful. He taught me that every car tells a story. The good restorers learn to listen. What story is my mother's car telling? Marcus was quiet for a moment, considering. Love, adventure, a woman who wasn't afraid to take chances. He met Charlotte's eyes. Sound familiar? Charlotte felt her breath catch. I'm not sure I'm as brave as she was. Maybe you just haven't had reason to be brave yet. They talked for over an hour, conversation flowing easily from cars to music to favorite childhood memories. Marcus told her about learning to rebuild engines with his uncle, and Charlotte found herself sharing stories about her mother that she hadn't told anyone in years. She would have liked you, Charlotte said as they prepared to leave. She had good instincts about people. I would have liked to meet her. Marcus walked her to her car, hands in his pockets against the evening chill. Would you like to do this again? Maybe dinner next time? Charlotte's heart jumped, but her father's words echoed in her head. Professional distance, appropriate boundaries. I'd like that, she heard herself say. But maybe we should keep things simple. I don't want to complicate the work you're doing for my family. Something flickered across Marcus's expression. Disappointment, maybe, or understanding. Of course. Professional boundaries are important. The words sounded cold and formal in the evening air. Charlotte immediately wanted to take them back, but Marcus was already stepping away from her car. Drive safe, Charlotte. See you when the Mustang's ready. As she drove home, Charlotte felt like she'd made a terrible mistake. She'd let her father's caution override her own instincts, and now the easy warmth between them had been replaced by careful politeness. Her phone buzzed with a text from Nina. How was coffee with the gorgeous mechanic? Charlotte stared at the message for a long time before typing back. Complicated. Because that's what it was. Complicated in ways she hadn't anticipated. Her feelings for Marcus were growing stronger every time she saw him. But the gulf between their worlds seemed to be growing wider too. How could she bridge that gap without crossing lines that might hurt them both? That night, Charlotte fell asleep thinking about the disappointment in Marcus's eyes and wondering if she'd just thrown away something precious before it had a chance to bloom. Tuesday morning arrived with crisp sunshine and the kind of clarity that made everything look sharper. Charlotte sat at her desk, staring at a half-finished email about catering arrangements. But her mind kept drifting back to the awkward way her coffee date with Marcus had ended. Nina knocked and entered without waiting for permission, carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing her no-nonsense expression. Okay, spill. What happened last night? Charlotte accepted the coffee gratefully. I panicked. Dad made some comment about maintaining professional boundaries, and I let it get in my head. So, you told Marcus to keep things simple? Something like that? Charlotte winced at the memory. You should have seen his face, Nina. He went from warm and open to completely professional in about 2 seconds. Can you blame him? Nina settled into her chair. From his perspective, you probably sounded like every rich girl who's ever slummed with the help. I wasn't slumming. I know that, But he doesn't. Nina leaned forward. Look, Lottie, I've watched you navigate corporate politics for 5 years. You're smart, diplomatic, and you know how to handle delicate situations. So why are you letting your father's overprotectiveness turn you into someone you're not? Before Charlotte could answer, her phone buzzed. Unknown number? Mustang ready for test drive Friday if you're available. Professional update only. Marcus. The formal tone made her stomach twist. She showed the text to Nina, who shook her head sadly. He's protecting himself. Smart man. I've ruined everything, haven't I? Not yet, but you're going to have to decide what matters more. Your father's approval or your own happiness. Nina stood to leave, then paused at the door. For what it's worth, your mother never worried much about appropriate boundaries when it came to following her heart. The rest of the week crawled by. Charlotte threw herself into gala preparations, confirming details with vendors and reviewing final arrangements with Wesley. He was unfailingly polite and charming, exactly the kind of man her father approved of. Safe, predictable, socially appropriate. Also completely wrong for her. Friday afternoon found Charlotte driving toward Delgado Auto with a mixture of excitement and dread. She'd rehearsed various apologies in her head, but none of them seemed adequate for the hurt she'd caused. Marcus was waiting by the restoration bay when she arrived, professional and distant. The Mustang sat gleaming behind him, top down and ready for the road. She's beautiful, Charlotte breathed, momentarily forgetting their awkwardness. Runs like a dream. Want to take her out? They drove in relative silence through the city streets and out toward the coastal highway. The Mustang purred beneath them, wind whipping Charlotte's carefully styled hair into chaos. Despite the tension between them, she found herself smiling as they climbed into the hills overlooking the bay. Marcus pulled into a scenic overlook and cut the engine. The silence that felt heavy with unspoken words. This was Mom's favorite spot, Charlotte said finally. She used to bring me here when I was little. It's peaceful. Marcus's hands rested on the steering wheel, and Charlotte noticed he was wearing a simple silver watch. Practical, elegant, understated. Marcus, I owe you an apology. A real one. He turned to look at her, expression carefully neutral. For what? For letting my father's concerns override my own feelings. For making you think I see you as just a service provider? Charlotte took a shaky breath. For being a coward. Something shifted in Marcus's face, but he remained quiet. The truth is, I've been thinking about you all week, about our conversation at the coffee shop, about how easy it was to talk to you. And then I got scared because my feelings were getting stronger, and I let that fear make me say things I didn't mean. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, studying the view of the bay spread out below them. Can I ask you something? Anything. What are you really afraid of? That I'm not good enough for your world? Or that your world might not be good enough for you? The question hit her like a physical blow. Charlotte stared at him, recognizing the truth she'd been avoiding. The second one? She whispered. Marcus nodded slowly. I've been there. Had a relationship a few years ago with a woman who thought I had potential. Kept suggesting ways I could improve myself, advance my career, fit better into her circle. His voice was matter-of-fact, but Charlotte heard the old hurt underneath. Took me too long to realize she didn't actually want me. She wanted the idea of me, polished up and made more acceptable. I would never... I know. Marcus's voice was gentle. That's what made Monday night so hard, because I was starting to believe you might be different. Charlotte felt tears prick her eyes. I am different, or I want to be. I just don't know how to navigate this without hurting you or disappointing my family. Maybe, Marcus said quietly. You need to figure out whose disappointment you can live with. They sat in comfortable silence, watching sailboats drift across the bay like white butterflies. Charlotte thought about her mother's note, about taking the scenic route and not being afraid of accidental destinations. Would you be willing to try again? She asked finally. Dinner this time, like you suggested. No talk of professional boundaries or appropriate behavior. Marcus smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him all week. I know a place. Good food, no pretense. You interested in getting your hands a little dirty? Charlotte laughed, remembering her mother's words about finding beauty in unexpected places. I thought you'd never ask. They drove back to the city as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. When Marcus pulled into Delgado Auto, Charlotte was reluctant for the drive to end. Pick you up at 7 tomorrow? He asked as they switched seats. Perfect. As Charlotte drove the Mustang home, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years. The thrill of possibility, of stepping into unknown territory without a map. Her mother would have been proud. Saturday evening arrived gray and drizzly, but Charlotte's mood was bright as she chose a simple dress and comfortable shoes. Whatever restaurant Marcus had in mind, she was determined to approach it with an open heart and mind. He picked her up in a clean but clearly well-used pickup truck, wearing dark jeans and a button-down shirt that brought out the warm brown of his eyes. This is very mysterious, Charlotte said as they drove through neighborhoods she'd never explored. Patience. Good things are worth waiting for. The restaurant turned out to be a small, family-owned place in the Mission District, with mismatched tables and the kind of authentic Mexican food that made Charlotte's mouth water the moment they walked in. Marcus was greeted like family by the elderly woman who seated them. This is incredible, Charlotte said after tasting her first bite of mole. How did you find this place? Carlos, the guy I mentioned who loves Tres Leches cake. His grandmother owns it. Been coming here for years. Marcus grinned. Not exactly white tablecloth dining. This is better than white tablecloth dining. This has soul. They talked easily over dinner, sharing stories about favorite foods and travel dreams. Marcus told her about his plans to eventually open his own restoration shop, specializing in classic cars. Charlotte found herself opening up about her struggle to find her own path within her father's company. What would you do if money wasn't a factor? Marcus asked. Photography, maybe, or travel writing? Charlotte paused, surprised by her own honesty. I used to love documenting our road trips with Mom. She always said I had a good eye for finding beauty in ordinary moments. Sounds like she was right about a lot of things. As they walked back to his truck after dinner, Charlotte felt lighter than she had in weeks. This, easy conversation, genuine laughter, the simple pleasure of sharing good food. This was what she'd been missing without even knowing it. Thank you, she said as Marcus walked her to her apartment door. For dinner, for the patience, for giving me another chance? Thank you for taking it. Marcus moved closer, his voice dropping to that soft tone that made her pulse quicken. Charlotte, I need you to know something. What's that? I'm not interested in being your rebellion or your walk on the wild side. If we do this, I need to know you see me as an equal, not an experiment. Charlotte looked up into his serious eyes, understanding the weight of what he was asking. I see you as someone who makes me laugh, someone who handles precious things with care, someone who's shown me more kindness in 2 weeks than I knew I was missing. She paused, gathering courage. I see you as a man I'm falling for, despite every logical reason I should keep my distance. Marcus smiled and touched her face gently. That's all I needed to know, When he kissed her, soft and careful under the glow of her building's entrance light, Charlotte felt like she was finally stepping into her own story instead of living someone else's version of her life. "I should go," Marcus said eventually, though he made no move to step away. "I know." But Charlotte didn't move either, reluctant to break the spell of the moment. "Dinner tomorrow? I'll cook this time." "I'd love that." As she rode the elevator up to her apartment, Charlotte caught her reflection in the polished doors. Nina was right. She was glowing. And for the first time in years, she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Her phone buzzed with a text from her father. "Hope you had a nice evening. Looking forward to the gala next Saturday?" Charlotte stared at the message, reality crashing back like a cold wave. Next Saturday's gala, where she was expected to arrive with Wesley Grant, where her father's business associates would be watching and judging, where her relationship with Marcus would either have to be hidden or defended. She typed back, "Nice evening. We should talk soon about next Saturday." It was time to have an honest conversation with her father. Time to decide, as Marcus had put it, whose disappointment she could live with. Because she was beginning to realize that losing Marcus's respect would be far harder to bear than facing her father's concerns. Sunday afternoon found Charlotte standing in Marcus's kitchen, watching him prepare what he'd promised would be the best homemade pasta she'd ever tasted. His apartment was small but comfortable, filled with books and framed photographs of classic cars. Blues music played softly from an old radio, and the whole place felt warm and lived in. "Can I help?" she asked, feeling useless as he moved efficiently around the compact space. "You can tell me about this gala that's been making you look stressed all day." Charlotte sighed, accepting the glass of wine he handed her. "Annual charity fundraiser, 500 guests, black tie, lots of my father's business associates and board members." "Sounds fancy." Marcus's tone was carefully neutral as he stirred sauce on the stove. "It is, and I'm supposed to arrive with Wesley Grant. Family friend, appropriate escort, exactly the kind of man everyone expects me to end up with." Marcus nodded slowly. "But you'd rather arrive with the inappropriate mechanic." "I'd rather arrive with the man who makes me laugh and sees beauty in broken things and treats my mother's memory like it matters." Charlotte set down her wine and moved closer to him. "Marcus, I don't care what anyone thinks. I care about you." He turned from the stove to look at her, expression serious. "It's not that simple, Charlotte. Your father's already made it clear he thinks I'm overstepping boundaries." "Taking you to his company's biggest social event of the year? That's going to send a very specific message." "Good. Maybe it's time people got that message." "And if it costs your relationship with your father? If it makes things uncomfortable at work?" Charlotte had been asking herself the same questions all week. "Then, I'll deal with those consequences. My mother didn't build her life around other people's expectations. Maybe it's time I stopped doing that too." Marcus was quiet for a moment, studying her face. Then he smiled and pulled her into his arms. "In that case, I should probably learn how to tie a bow tie." They spent the rest of the afternoon cooking together, talking about everything and nothing. Marcus told her about his uncle who'd taught him to rebuild engines, and Charlotte shared memories of her mother's fearless approach to life. When evening came, neither wanted the day to end. "I should go," Charlotte said reluctantly as they cleaned up dinner dishes. "Should, maybe. Want to?" "Definitely not." Marcus laughed and pulled her close again. "Good thing I like having you around." As they kissed in his small kitchen, with blues music playing and the scent of garlic still lingering in the air, Charlotte felt like she'd found something she hadn't even known she was looking for. Not just romance, but a sense of coming home to herself. Her phone rang as they were saying goodnight, her father's ringtone. "I should take this," she said apologetically. Marcus nodded and gave her privacy, but she could see him listening from the hallway. "Hi, Dad." "Charlotte, I wanted to confirm final details for next Saturday. Wesley will pick you up at 7, and I've reserved our usual table." Charlotte took a deep breath. "Actually, Dad, I need to talk to you about that. Could we have coffee this week? There's something important I need to discuss." Victor's voice sharpened slightly. "Everything all right?" "Everything's fine. I just have some decisions to share with you." After she hung up, Marcus reappeared with a gentle expression. "That sounded hard." "It will be, but you're worth it." As Charlotte drove home through the quiet Sunday evening streets, she felt a calm certainty settling over her. Whatever happened with her father, whatever challenges lay ahead, she was tired of living her life according to other people's rules. It was time to write her own story, even if it meant disappointing some people along the way. Her mother had taught her that lesson long ago. It had just taken falling for Marcus Reed to remember it. Wednesday morning found Charlotte sitting across from her father in his office, watching him process what she'd just told him. Victor's coffee sat untouched as he stared out the window at the bay, his expression unreadable. "You want to bring Marcus Reed to the gala?" he said finally, his voice carefully controlled. "Yes." Charlotte kept her own voice steady, despite the butterflies in her stomach. "We've been seeing each other, Dad. He's important to me." Victor turned from the window, and Charlotte saw a mix of concern and disappointment in his eyes. "Sweetheart, I appreciate that you're grateful for the work he's done on your mother's car. But gratitude isn't the same as—" "This isn't about gratitude," Charlotte interrupted gently but firmly. "I care about him. He's kind, honest, hardworking. He treats me like an equal, not like some fragile thing that needs protecting." "Charlotte, you've known him for 2 weeks. Sometimes that's enough." She thought about her mother's stories of falling for Victor after 3 dates. "You always told me that Mom knew you were the one almost immediately." Victor's expression softened slightly at the mention of his late wife. "Your mother and I came from the same world. We understood each other's expectations, our family's needs. Marcus understands what matters to me. Isn't that more important than shared expectations?" Before Victor could respond, his assistant knocked. "Mr. Hale, Rosa Delgado is here to see you. She says it's about the Mustang restoration." Victor and Charlotte exchanged surprised looks. "Send her in," Victor said. Rosa entered looking nervous but determined, clutching a manila envelope. "I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Hale, but I thought you should see this before making any decisions about Marcus." She handed Victor the envelope. "These are copies of invoices and work orders from the past year. Marcus has turned down 3 opportunities to overcharge your family. Last month, a parts supplier offered him a kickback for ordering unnecessary work on the Mustang. He reported it to me instead." Victor opened the envelope, scanning the documents with growing interest. "There's more," Rosa continued, glancing at Charlotte. "6 months ago, Marcus found a bracelet in your daughter's car when it was towed to our shop. Expensive piece, diamonds and emeralds. He could have kept it or sold it. Instead, he had me return it anonymously to your assistant." Charlotte's breath caught. She remembered losing her grandmother's bracelet last year, remembered how mysteriously it had appeared on Nina's desk, with a note saying it had been found in the corporate parking garage. "He asked me not to mention it." "Came from him?" Rosa went on. "Said he didn't want credit for doing what anyone decent would do." Victor set down the papers, his expression thoughtful. "Rosa, why are you telling me this?" "Because Marcus is the best man I know. He's been my lead mechanic for 3 years, and I've never seen him treat anything, or anyone, with anything less than complete respect. Rosa's voice grew stronger. If my own daughter brought home a man like Marcus Reed, I'd count my blessings. After Rosa left, father and daughter sat in heavy silence. Victor picked up one of the invoices, studying Marcus's neat handwriting in the margins where he'd noted original part specifications. He really did turn down extra charges, Victor said quietly. He's been taking care of people who matter to me since before he even knew who I was, Charlotte replied. Dad, I know this isn't what you pictured for me, but Marcus makes me want to be better, braver. Isn't that what you'd want for your daughter? Victor was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. Your mother used to say that the measure of a man wasn't what he could give you, but what he brought out in you. He looked at Charlotte with sad resignation. I can see that he brings out something in you that's been missing. Then you'll support my decision? I'll try. Victor came around his desk to hug her. But Charlotte, you have to understand, bringing him to the gala will start conversations. Some people will judge you both unfairly. Let them judge. Charlotte hugged him back, feeling lighter than she had in days. Mom never worried much about what other people thought. No. Victor smiled sadly. She definitely didn't. Friday afternoon found Charlotte standing in her bedroom, staring at 2 dresses laid out on her bed. The midnight blue gown she'd originally chosen was elegant and conservative, exactly what was expected at her father's gala. The other dress was newer, a deep emerald green that brought out her eyes and made her feel beautiful rather than merely appropriate. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Picked up the tux, still not sure about the bow tie situation. She smiled and typed back. YouTube tutorial? Or I could help. Definitely option 2. An hour later, Charlotte stood in Marcus's bathroom, trying to knot his bow tie while he held very still. The intimacy of the moment, her fingers at his throat, his hands resting lightly on her waist, made her pulse quicken. There, she said, adjusting the silk. Perfect. Marcus examined himself in the mirror, and Charlotte felt a flutter of pride. He looked devastatingly handsome in the black tuxedo, sophisticated without losing the quiet strength that had first drawn her to him. Think I'll pass inspection? He asked with a slight smile. You'll be the best-looking man there. Charlotte smoothed the lapels of his jacket. Marcus, are you nervous about tonight? A little, he admitted. Not about being with you, but about the rest of it. I don't want to say or do anything that reflects badly on you. Charlotte turned him to face her fully. Just be yourself. That's all I want, all I've ever wanted. Even when your father's business partners are watching? When people start asking questions about who I am and what I do? Especially then. Charlotte touched his face gently. I'm proud of you, Marcus Reed. Proud of your work, your integrity, the way you treat people. Anyone who can't see that isn't worth impressing. Marcus kissed her then, soft and sure, and Charlotte felt her remaining doubts dissolve. Whatever happened tonight, they would face it together. The gala was held at the city's most exclusive hotel, its ballroom transformed with white roses and twinkling lights. Charlotte entered on Marcus's arm, wearing the emerald dress and her grandmother's diamond bracelet, the one Marcus had returned without ever seeking credit. She felt the subtle shift in attention as people noticed her unfamiliar escort. Victor appeared at their side immediately, extending his hand to Marcus with genuine warmth. Marcus, thank you for coming. You look very sharp. Thank you for including me, Mr. Hale. Marcus's handshake was firm, his demeanor calm despite the curious stares. Dad? Charlotte said quietly. Where's Wesley? I called him last week, Victor replied with a slight smile. Explained that you'd be bringing someone else. He was very gracious about it. Charlotte felt a rush of gratitude for both men, Wesley for his understanding, and her father for smoothing what could have been an awkward situation. As they mingled through the crowd, Charlotte watched Marcus navigate conversations with impressive ease. He listened more than he spoke, asked thoughtful questions, and showed genuine interest in people's stories. When someone asked what he did for a living, he answered with quiet pride. I restore classic automobiles. It's rewarding work. How fascinating, said Mrs. Henderson, a board member's wife. What kind of cars? Mostly American classics from the 60s and 70s. I'm currently working on a 1967 Mustang convertible. Marcus glanced at Charlotte with a warm smile. It belonged to Charlotte's mother. Oh, how lovely that you're preserving family history. Mrs. Henderson beamed, clearly charmed by his respectful manner. The evening progressed smoothly until dinner, when Charlotte found herself seated next to David Morrison, one of her father's longtime business partners. Morrison had clearly had several drinks, and his comments grew increasingly pointed. So, Marcus, Morrison said with false joviality, what exactly are your intentions regarding our Charlotte here? Charlotte felt Marcus stiffen beside her, but his voice remained steady. I care about Charlotte very much, sir. Care about her, or care about what she represents? Morrison's smile didn't reach his eyes. Pretty convenient, mechanic falling for the CEO's daughter. David! Victor's voice cut across the table like ice. That's enough! But Marcus was already responding, his voice calm but steel-edged. Mr. Morrison, I understand your concern for Charlotte's well-being. If I were her father or friend, I'd want to know the same thing. He met Morrison's stare directly. I can't prove my intentions with words, only with actions over time. But I can tell you that Charlotte makes me want to be the best version of myself, and I hope I do the same for her. Morrison looked like he wanted to say more, but the quiet dignity in Marcus's response seemed to deflate his aggression. The conversation moved on, but Charlotte noticed several people at nearby tables nodding approvingly at Marcus's handling of the confrontation. Later, as they danced to soft jazz music, Charlotte felt overwhelmed with emotion. You were amazing tonight, she whispered against his ear. You make it easy, Marcus replied, spinning her gently. When you believe in someone, it makes them believe in themselves. As the evening wound down, Victor approached them with a small box in his hands. Marcus, I have something for you. He opened the box to reveal a set of keys. The Mustang is officially yours to complete. Take whatever time you need, spare no expense, and when it's ready. He looked at Charlotte with tears in his eyes. I think Elizabeth would want her daughter to drive it. Charlotte felt her throat tighten with emotion. Her father was giving his blessing in the most meaningful way possible, by entrusting her most precious memory to the man she'd chosen. Sir, I'm honored, Marcus said quietly, accepting the keys. I'll take good care of it. I know you will. As they prepared to leave, Charlotte realized the evening had been a turning point. Not because she'd proven anything to anyone else, but because she'd finally stood up for her own choices. The whispers and curious looks hadn't mattered. What mattered was the way Marcus had handled himself with grace, the way her father had come to respect him, and the way she felt when she looked at their joined hands. Outside the hotel, as they waited for the valet to bring Marcus's truck, Charlotte felt giddy with relief and happiness. So, Marcus said, pulling her close, how does it feel to scandalize high society? Charlotte laughed, thinking about the evening's small dramas and large victories. Like I'm finally living my own life instead of someone else's idea of what my life should be. Good, because I have plans for that life of yours. Oh, really? Like what? Marcus's eyes twinkled with mischief. Well, there's a certain convertible that needs a proper road trip once it's finished. I'm thinking we drive up the coast, find some of those roadside diners your mother loved. Maybe stop at a few antique shops, see what kind of beautiful things we can discover by accident. Charlotte felt her heart swell with joy. That sounds perfect. As they drove through the quiet city streets, Charlotte thought about her mother's note. Sometimes the most beautiful destinations are the ones you discover by accident. She'd certainly never planned to fall for Marcus Reed, but now she couldn't imagine her life without him. Marcus? I love you. The words hung in the air between them, simple and true. Marcus pulled over to the side of the road and turned to face her, his expression serious and tender. Charlotte Hale, I love you too, more than I thought possible. When he kissed her this time, it tasted like promises and forever. Like two people who'd found their way to each other despite every obstacle and expectation. 3 months later, Charlotte stood beside the fully restored Mustang, wearing jeans and a simple sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. Marcus was making final adjustments to the engine, his sleeves rolled up and a satisfied smile on his face. She's ready, he announced, wiping his hands on a clean rag. Charlotte ran her fingers along the gleaming red paint, thinking about all the miles this car had traveled with her mother, all the adventures yet to come. The restoration was perfect, every detail authentic, every surface gleaming. It's beautiful, Marcus. Mom would love it. Want to take her for a drive? Charlotte climbed into the driver's seat, Marcus beside her, and turned the key. The engine purred to life with a sound that transported her instantly back to childhood. Sunday drives with the top down, her mother's voice singing along to the radio, the feeling that the whole world was open and waiting. As they drove toward the coast, wind whipping through their hair, Charlotte felt the last piece of her old self fall away. She wasn't Victor Hale's sheltered daughter anymore, or the polished executive who'd never taken risks. She was simply Charlotte, a woman in love with a good man, driving her mother's car toward whatever adventures awaited them. Where to? Marcus called over the wind and engine noise. Charlotte smiled, thinking about scenic routes and accidental destinations, about courage and love, and the beautiful unpredictability of following your heart. Anywhere, she called back. Everywhere. We have all the time in the world. And as they drove into the golden afternoon sunlight, the past flowing behind them and the future stretching ahead like an open road, Charlotte knew her mother would have been proud. She'd finally learned to take the scenic route, and it had led her exactly where she belonged. The end.